I know you haven't had a chance to see the show. It's very good, according to me. No, but we talk about things. We talk about things that we want to talk about, not necessarily promoting or awards and everything. And mostly, I'm excited to talk to you about your dad because everybody loved Johnny Cash, and I can't wait. Here, we're rolling. Good evening, I'm Clint Black, and tonight I am talking in circles with Pam Tillis. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
You and I, our careers were really jumping off about the same time, so we would mingle backstage and in green rooms of various things, but we never really had a chance to talk a lot.
I know.
For me, when my career was getting going, it was a whirlwind. I thought I was, calm, cool, and collected, but 10 years later, I look back and I went, no, I wasn't very cool. And then I thought, now I am. And then 10 years after that, I'm looking back and I'm realizing, as I got more and more settled into celebrity and fame and all that, and just the crazy schedule, that I never really had it down. I feel like I do now. You grew up here. And
so I had no excuse.
You were already immersed in this world,
Right.
and I wonder if it was head spinning to you.
I did grow up around it, but it's very different standing in the wings and watching your dad do it, and then you getting out there and doing it. It's very different. And to my dad, Mel Tillis, entertaining.
Mel,
that's it. You remember now. No, it was like falling off a log. He never worked a day in his life, right? Entertaining, making people laugh. He charmed people, and it was just nothing for him. For me, I always felt like the C student that had to work a little bit harder because for some reason, my own personal wiring, I had stage fright. But I wanted to sing so bad and I wanted to perform so bad that I've mostly been able to push some kind of little internal override button. But
so we didn't see it. That's what I'm thinking is,
I was.
You just don't know what's going on inside.
You don't, but I explained it to my manager one day. I said, this is hard. I said, every day I go to work, I feel like an air traffic controller level of anxiety, but I still wanted to do it so badly that I just dealt with it. But I relate to what you're saying. Maybe this isn't the peak of my career now, but I still get to work and I'm enjoying it actually more than ever. Because thank you.
It may be odd to hear that. But we've been around a long time. You get better and better and better.
You get more confident in your craft. And I figure after 30 years of being on the road and all the records and different things that have held up, I go, well, maybe I'm not a flash in the pan after all. No. Which is your worry for the first 20 years, right?
Yeah. I would expect that there's this tremendous advantage with your dad. And growing up here, kind of like all the kids that went to Hollywood High whose parents were actors or executives, you're going to pick up something along the way.
Clint, I think it's great that your daughter is working, that you're bringing her up and showing her and helping her, encouraging her.
You have to find the balance between helping and letting go and all that.
You do, and Dad had to learn what that was because there was a certain point where he wanted to help me, but he had a much different image of me than I had of myself. I was his little girl, and, he wanted me to dress a certain way, and he wanted me to sing certain songs.
I get that.
You know what I mean? And I was in a little bit of a box, and so I started out my first professional gig in the music business. Well, I'd been doing a little bit of writers' nights around town, but I really got the bug one summer. Daddy had a publishing company on West End Avenue. It's a Chinese restaurant now. And I started in there. Back then, there was typing and filing, and we'd help mail out all the records to the DJs, whenever there was a new single. So I got in there, and he had a publishing company, and all these songwriters were coming in and out. And there was an excitement in the air. And meeting these kind of people, because when I was a kid, Daddy kept his business kind of separate, you know. We didn't go with him to work all the time. But all of a sudden, I was meeting people that weren't that much farther away from me in age. And I could relate to them. And I went, yeah, this really is my family, this creative community. This does feel like my tribe. Some of the songwriters in there said, so you write songs too? And I said, yeah, mostly sitting in my room, but yeah, I'm writing songs. And they go, well, we could kick some around if you want to. And so I started kind of collaborating with some of the songwriters in the
These are
publishing
hit
company.
songwriters already, right? Or they just
Well, you know,
starting out?
Dean Dillon was hanging out there in the Songwriter Hall of Fame. Tommy Collins, who was name-checked in a song of Merle Haggard's. Tommy Collins was a very influential writer to a lot of people. He was hanging out there, and of course, Buddy Cannon was kind of he was writing and running Daddy's publishing company, and he went on to produce Kenny Chesney, Alison Krauss, like 1 million hit records, and a great writer too. So it got in my blood, but I realized after a couple of summers there were some people in the company that didn't treat me just like another person. I was very much aware that I was being treated like the boss's daughter, and I didn't like that feeling at all. And so at a certain point, I had to tell Daddy, it's like, Daddy, I got to leave. I might go over here to this other publishing company. And I know it kind of hurt his feelings, but he said, well, you do what you need to do. So I went on, and I just started getting out and doing my own thing, and Daddy had to let go.
Daddy had to let go.
Yeah.
There's the song we should write.
I like that. I like that.
You're daddy, and I'm a daddy who has to let go.
He gave me roots, and he gave me wings.
Yeah. I didn't know this, but I read that you actually went out to California, but you didn't go where I expect everyone else to go, to L.A.
Yeah, I didn't.
But you went to San Francisco.
I did.
Was it the Haight-Ashbury and all of that stuff?
Yes, and that really freaked Dad out. He's I know what goes on out there, you know, and that was a wild scene. It was...
Did you have any friends who welcomed you there? Or
I went with a band. I just had serious wild hair. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't. And I'm like, well, you know, I can sing country music, but I like all these other kinds of music, and let me figure out who I am before anybody decides for me. That's all I wanted. I just wanted that time. So I went on a long and meandering trail of musical experimentation, and I ended up in a fusion band. I was right out of college, and like Chick Corea was really big, and Stanley Clark, and Joni Mitchell was and she was a huge influence on me. She was working with these incredible jazz musicians. And so I sang a little bit of jazz, but it was kind of rock jazz, you know. So, yeah. George Benson was kind of a jazz crossover pop. I did that for a while, and it was fantastic. I sang at Winterland with one of the Grateful Dead. I did all kinds of stuff that people wouldn't expect. I was in a band with Huey Lewis's bass player, and the guitar player had been in a big 60s supergroup, Quicksilver Messengers, or like all kinds of things you would not expect me to be doing. And it was awesome, except I really am a Southern girl at heart. And there was something about it that just made me feel really forlorn. And I was kind of in over my head. The crowd, too, was a really kind of a fast rock and roll crowd. And, you know, I'd led a really sheltered life. And I was only 21, and I'm like, I need to go home and get grounded again. But, you know, things come full circle, don't you think?
Why,
Talking in
yes, I
do. And it's
Not
funny.
used to being teed up like that.
You know, I'll set them up. You got to knock them down.
Have to be ready.
Anyway, so I would like to I did a Christmas album called Tillis Sings Tillis, and it kind of has a little bit of a hillbilly jazz flavor to it, kind of torchy, some of it, but still country, jazzy country. And I think I'd like to make a jazz album. I've never done it. I think at some point I'd like to, and I just got to get it out. Whatever, you know, it's not good to put yourself in a box. I'm country, this is me, this is who I am, but I can do some other things, and if you can, you need to.
Tillis sings Tillis.
Yeah,
Detroit City,
yeah.
one of the songs you sang. And, Bobby Bear, I grew up with Bobby Bear singing Detroit City. So I was really curious to hear. And you really just, I don't hate to use the term reinvented, but you created some new, it was always this sad song, but you just brought more emotion,
Thank you.
sort of a smoother approach, and
Yeah, I kind
really
of did.
nice.
I did most of them. I think about half and half. I did some that were a little bit closer to the originals, and then some I really took them in a new place. I did Heart Over Mind, and I slowed it way down, like way down.
And it worked, which is the sign of a great song, right?
Exactly. And it was really, the way Daddy did it was pretty up-tempo, and it was sad, but it didn't sound sad. And when I did it, it sounded really sad. But we put Dad in front of the mixing board. When we were mixing it, we wanted him to hear the rough mixes. And he sat there and he's listening. And he's facing away from us. He's in the chair listening. He's like shaking his head. After it was over, he spun his chair around. He looked at me. He goes, I didn't know it would do that.
How about the one Dolly sang on with you, Violet and a Rose?
I got a little story about that, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she sang it, and it was stunning. And I met Dolly as a little girl. She was coming to the public's attention in the Porter Wagner show. Daddy was a semi-regular. Anyway, so I just thought she was amazing. But I was little, so cut to all these years later, and I'd never really been around her, maybe seen her in passing. But to be in a room and hear Dolly Parton's voice, like not on a record, not recorded, that's just a God thing. Like, it just comes out of her mouth and it already sounds like engineered, like they put extra special engineer sauce on it. But it sounds that way. And my husband did a lot of the first round of engineering on it, before we mix it. So she came in and I was nervous, but he was a wreck. He was really embarrassing. And he was so, I said, honey, do we need to find you a little drool bucket? He was so, I said, you just gotta be cool. Just please be cool. So he got through it. But Dolly did it, and we were all felt like there was stardust, fairy dust, in the studio, kind of lingering in the air for days. She had a little water glass, and she left a little lip print on the water glass, and she set it on the console. And nobody wanted to pick it up. We just left it there for several days. It's like we just wanted to have it there. It's Dolly's lips on there, yeah. And I had a housekeeper at the time, and he had an assistant came in, and the assistant came up to the studio, and he goes, you want me to get this? And we said, no, maybe not yet. He goes, why? And we said, well, that's Dolly Parton. And it was by then, we had shined a little light on it, and we put some flowers around it. And we said, because that's Dolly's water glass. He goes, oh! He said, it's Dolly's water glass. I thought his head was going to come off. He says, can I have it? And we said, well, what are you going to do with it? He says, put it with my Elvis Presley pork chop bone.
And he probably meant that, right? You came out as a songwriter, singer, and wrote, and I read that you just went a long time without writing, or did you just not record your songs?
My first album, I wrote all of them. And my second album, I wrote a lot of them. And then with every album, I mentioned anxiety earlier, I would get more and more critical of my own songs. I got this kind of crippling self-consciousness about it. And I started thinking that I just needed bigger guns than what I could, because radio, back then it was just punishing. You just see your record crawl up the charts, and you just like every Monday was like, oh my God, this could be it, or oh, let's have a party, you know. It was such pressure, and I got to feeling insecure about my own writing.
Did you have the songs and just pushed them
Yeah,
over?
I'd push them aside, yeah. So there again, everything kind of comes full circle after not doing a record for a long time, because it was almost 10 years since I did a solo record. I'd saved up all these songs. And so my new album I wrote a lot of. And I'm like, you know,
looking for a feeling?
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't care anymore. I mean, I like these songs. And like I said, you get to a point where you go, I don't have to prove anything. I just need to just let it all, it's okay. I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, with the songs you were writing, I think you had already proved something to everyone else. And my feeling is, okay, you know, you're going to get better and better and better.
Yeah. And I also got really busy, you know, and the same thing happened to Dad. You know, he was an unbelievable songwriter. He wrote 1,000 songs. But then after a while, he just kind of, the entertaining got to be a lot more fun than the writing. He wanted that instant gratification of an audience. I think I went through a little bit of that for a while too. But you write. Do you ever feel like, though, that you're always beginning again? Like you just, every song, when you start, it's just like, am I really going to do, is this really going to happen? They either happen really fast or you go, have I lost it? Can I still do this? You know, you just, I feel like I'm always a beginner. Even though I know certain things, it's not like I don't have a little bag of tricks or whatever, but I'm not interested in tricks anymore either. I just want to reach for something deeper than, maybe I'm not as concerned. Well, you know, after a while, they're not going to play some of us older artists either on the top 40. So that frees you up. You know, you don't have to fit into a little commercial box and you can do whatever.
The last song I wrote for Lisa and me to sing together, I hit that wall. And it took me about 3 weeks of having nothing. And I thought, I just can't, I don't know what else to write for us to say to each other.
Right.
You know how songwriting works. Something happens. And it was literally 3 weeks. And I was really trying. And I was getting absolutely nowhere.
Sometimes that's the worst thing you can do is really try.
Really trying.
No, sometimes you really do have to let it find you. Not to take the work ethic out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sometimes there's some kind of like serendipitous thing that'll happen. And it's like, that's the piece I needed. You might find it in the shower.
It was what, I find a lot of music in the shower.
Yes.
Because a running shower sounds like applause. I think that's what it is.
That's fantastic.
But it was a line. I just, you know, we had been married 30 years, and the line was, I can tell you how the story never ends.
Oh.
And I thought, I've never heard that. And
and then finally something you've never heard, right? Because that's the hardest thing to do is come up with things that people haven't already heard.
But it told me what the song was going to be about. And from there, then I had somewhere to go.
Somewhere to go.
I had nowhere to go before that. Right. And that's the magic. And I wasn't working at the moment.
And that does help. You can meander.
So I feel like I'm doing my best work. And from listening to Looking for a Feeling, I think I would say the same about you.
Wow, thank you.
And you have to believe that yourself.
Happy.
You have to believe that.
Well, I do feel like, you know, it's funny too. Songwriters aren't supposed to be, I'm actually a really private person. So that's kind of at odds with what you're supposed to be as a songwriter.
Letting it out?
Yeah, so I think that's something that I put maybe some themes on the record too that were very different subject matter. It's not all about love and heartache and blah, blah, blah. There's different ideas on the record, and I felt proud of that. So it's good when you can find that spark again.
I do have one more question I ask all my guests. I'm going to exclude your dad from this question.
Okay.
Because I imagine that would be your first thought. When you get to heaven, if you could sing a song with anyone who's already there, who would it be? And what song would you sing?
Oh, wow. Well, I would answer that different anytime you ask, ask me 100 times, I'd probably tell you I'd have 100 different answers, but it might be really cool to sing something with Elvis. I'm not one of those people that always was a giant Elvis fan. By the time I was of a certain age, some of those movies weren't that good, and I didn't know really young Elvis, how unbelievable.
It detracted a bit from
It really
who
did.
he really
and
was.
so I had to grow into my appreciation of Elvis,
It was the same for me.
which I feel kind of silly saying, but oh my God, he was so special.
Yeah, it would be cool.
It'd be cool to, yeah.
He's waiting up there. Well, thank you for being here, and
Thank you for
don't go
having
up
me.
there singing with Elvis anytime soon.
No.
Because we're happy to have you
Thank
here.
you. Thank
and,
you.
for many years to come.
Thank you.
Thanks. Pam Tillis.